Welcome to the MatSu Real Estate Market Update. My name is Jamin Goecker. I'm an associate real estate broker in the state of Alaska, and my mission is to help you to build an intentional and significant legacy for yourself and your family by coaching in real estate. And today we're going to be talking about what's going on in the MatSu area. And keep in mind, this is a big old honking area. You need to take a look at the map and see what all it encompasses, but the majority of it is going to be Palmer and Wasilla, and we're going to be looking at the single-family residential, we're going to be looking at land, and we're going to be looking at the multifamily sections of this market. Before we get started, though, do make sure you give this video 2 big thumbs up, and make sure you subscribe as well. We're getting close to 10,000 subscribers, and that's a goal I've had for a long time. So if this content has been helping you, do make sure you subscribe because that really does help a ton. Now, let's go and jump into today's video looking at the single-family homes. Now, the first thing we see is for the single-family homes is the inventory available on the market took a pretty good jump from about 370 properties available on the market to about 526. This is obviously a pretty big jump year over year. And it's really a trend we've seen in this year in the MatSu Valley, really starting in February, where we're starting to see more and more real estate, more and more properties getting onto the market compared to the year before. Now, this is a good indicator because it shows we're starting to get more and more back into a balanced market. Now, I don't want to suddenly see like triple the number of houses coming onto the market because that's not good. That gets us into a really unbalanced market. And I know a lot of buyers are like, well, that's good. That means I can get a deal. It's like, well, maybe. I'm not sure I want to catch a falling knife, but, maybe if that were to happen. Not going to see that happening anytime soon, by the way, but starting to see the inventory creeping back up. Do keep in mind, though, normally for this time of year, we'd expect anywhere from about 700, about 800 properties being on the market. So we're still a long ways off from that, but that is a really good step in the right direction. Keep in mind, we don't know based off of just this data how many of those single-family homes are new construction. And for those who don't know, new construction is it's usually a lot more expensive, takes more time, and so for a lot of people, it's just not really attainable. So it might look like there are more options, but there's really just not a whole lot of options. And for the MatSu Valley, new construction is particularly important because this is where the majority of new construction happens for the entire state. So it's something you need to be a little skeptical when you see the numbers going up. How many of these are real roof and wall houses right now, and how many of them are just sketches on a piece of paper that I have to pay $50,000 to even get started on. I just couldn't know just by looking at the numbers here. Looking at the properties that have actually sold, we see this time last year that there was about 178, and this year it's 152. So we're seeing a bit of a drop in the number of single-family properties that are actually selling. Now, keep in mind also, there's a lot of things that can impact this, and once you start getting to the summertime months, we expect really June, July, August, like those are going to be the months where they suddenly just pop up, but we're not going to see that information for like another month or so after it's actually all happened. So it's usually kind of a delayed reaction here. So yes, the number of properties that are selling is actually taking a not a dive, but it's definitely declining just a little bit. I think also just around election season, election year, every 4 years or so, we do maybe see a little bit of a dip there as well, just for the number of properties that are actually closing. That's a theory I've heard. I've not had a chance to really look into it very much, but that's one theory that I've heard. Now, the next thing we see is that the average sold price for single-family properties in the MatSu Valley went from about $398,000 to about $411,000, which means we're seeing about a 3.3% increase for the average sold price, which is actually about what you'd want to see. I think about 4%, 5% is kind of the national average. For the MatSu Valley, it just took off. Like 15% increase year over year for the average sold price. And that was too much. And we're kind of just going back more sustainable increase after having that accelerated of an appreciation. And a lot of people who live here now, I mean, a lot of them still haven't adjusted. They're going around going, oh, that's too much for a house. And there's no way anyone will spend that much, and it gets bought like the next day with multiple offers. So this is something we're probably not going to see change anytime soon because the MatSu Valley continues to be a very desirable place to live. Of course, there's the commute getting into Anchorage, but a commute in Alaska is not the same thing as a commute in the lower 48, because in Alaska, usually you're actually going full highway speed the majority of the time, and you've got the great scenery, and you're not stuck in bumper-to-bumper traffic. So really we're talking apples and oranges when we talk about commute times, and the folks in the MatSu Valley are perfectly fine having a lower cost of living in the MatSu and just making that commute to Anchorage for the higher wage. All right, let's switch gears a little bit and take a look at what's going on with land. So with land, what we're seeing is this time last year, there was about 606 pieces of land that were for sale. Now it's about 336. So we are seeing an increase for the number of just land listings that are available. Usually around this time of year, we'd expect anywhere from about 1,000 to about 1,200 properties, just raw land out there. And keep in mind, I don't know if this is all just, little postage stamp half-acre lots, if this is like 50 acres. I don't know. This is just the number of properties that are available in the MatSu Valley, and more or less, it's really staying steady. Land doesn't really fluctuate too much either direction here, with the exception of COVID and everything else. But that just is what it is. It just happens. Now, looking at the number of pieces of land that have actually sold, we see this time last year there were 78 pieces of property that sold for the month of June, and this year we're seeing it is 62. So seeing a bit of a drop off there. That's not a huge surprise. Just again, land kind of just the interest rates and everything involved with the construction of building is really going to dictate how quickly land is going to sell. So I'm not really surprised if cost of doing things goes up and we see a bit of a drop in the rate at which land is getting bought up. Now, looking historically, though, we do see that we actually do see about 60 some pieces of property actually selling around this time of year, despite having all the raw land available. Like I said, like 1,000 to 1,200 pieces of land. Usually we're still only selling about 60 pieces of land for the month of June. So even with the low inventory, we're still seeing about the same number of properties selling, which means there is a pretty good demand remaining out there. Last but not least, for those of you looking at purchasing land, here's some good news. It looks like the average sold price for land went from $82,000 to about $80,000. So that is favorable, but keep in mind, again, it's kind of like multifamily where it encompasses a lot, because looking at the average sold price includes everything from the little postage note property where it's like, $20,000 all the way up to the big, 150 commercial zoned piece of property that's selling for like 3-point-something million. So it really does include everything in between. And, it all comes down to location, especially when we're talking about land, but I would be happy if it just maintained and just didn't do anything crazy in the near future. All right, let's go and take a break real quick here. For those of you who've been watching, you do know that I host a podcast called the Alaskan Journey Podcast, where I talk with people who've recently moved to Alaska and they share their stories about what it was like moving here, any tips and tricks they would like to give to other people who are considering doing the same thing, and really kind of answer the questions that people have as they're moving to Alaska from people who actually do live up here. So if that'd be something that would help you in your decision-making process and just kind of getting familiar with Alaska, do feel free to go check out that podcast. Link for that is going to be in the description section down below. Now, let's go and finish up today's market update looking at the multifamily market. Now, looking at the multifamily market, we see that this time last year, there were 39 properties that were on the market, and this year it's 42. And really, we're kind of grinding back faster to market we had before COVID in the multifamily market better than we are in any other asset class, because normally we would see something around like low 60s, 70 multifamily properties available for the month of June, and now we're seeing about 42. So we're getting closer to that point. And whether or not these are all just new construction multifamily properties that are going up because a lot of people are moving to the MatSu Valley, and how much of it is people trying to sell their properties that are already existing, I couldn't say for sure. But I can tell you that multifamily property is kind of adjusting quicker than any other asset class as far as the inventory goes. Now, what we see for the number of closed units for multifamily in the MatSu Valley, we see that this time last year was 13, and this year it is 6. So we're seeing a bit of a dive in just the number of properties that have sold this time of year compared to the year before. Keep in mind that can be a lot of different variables, really just coming down to interest rates, because that does play into it a lot more in multifamily than it does in residential, because if it doesn't pencil out, it doesn't make sense for you to purchase. So we are seeing a bit of a dip there, and I mean the number of properties that are selling in multifamily can kind of fluctuate month to month. So let's keep an eye on it. I really don't think that the demand for multifamily properties are half of what it was this time last year. Last but not least, we see for the average sold price, the average sold price went from about $580,000 to about $603,000. Now, keep in mind that does include everything from the little duplex all the way on up to the multifamily that's like 30 plus units. So let's not get too excited. I do expect to see that there is a pretty healthy appreciation for multifamily properties in the MatSu Valley because you do have more people moving there. You do see rents going up. So the value of these multifamily properties are going to go up accordingly. Whether or not they've gone up by that much, I really couldn't say. But it's going to come down to the specific property, how well it's been maintained, how well as a landlord that person has done at keeping up with the property, and really making sure the tenants are well taken care of, and just making sure that they're keeping up with the market rents as well. Now, looking at the overall summary here, if I am a buyer, I am more optimistic about the MatSu Valley than I am in most other parts of Alaska, just because there's more options and there's a lot more area for development. And if you are in a position where you can do some kind of a new construction or find something that has been started at least, so you're not starting from scratch, you're going to get more options for that than you will anywhere else. So that is favorable. And also the average sold price in the MatSu Valley is going to be lower than what it's going to be in its counterparts over in Anchorage and Eagle River. The downside obviously being that you're going to have to drive, and also I just don't think we have quite as many properties available as you would think, looking at just the aggregate number of properties that look like it's available right now, because a good number of those can be new construction that builders just throw up there because they don't stand to lose anything by having an entire pocket of like 5 or 6 properties in this little area. They haven't broken ground on a single one of them, but they still put the listing out there and say, oh yeah, we've got this new construction home there, and that's 5 properties right there that show up that don't actually exist. So let's not get too carried away here. For those of you who are on the ground looking, once there's something there, there's going to be some level of hustle we got to do in order to get there and get it under contract. Not as bad as it was a couple of years ago, but we still got to have some sense of urgency. If you're a seller, we see the average sold price is obviously increasing, and that's good. And we don't want it to continue going up by 15% because that's kind of insane and that's not sustainable. And we're pretty happy with about that 3-4% interest. Maybe 5. We can get 5. I'd be happy. Increase for the appreciation year over year. Looking at the land, that really does encompass quite a bit. We see the price for land has gone up by about $20,000 since 2020, and we're seeing more and more development happening in the MatSu as more people do move out in that area. Now, looking at multifamily, not much more to add to that from what I've already said. The main thing is just making sure if you're looking at multifamily properties, make sure the numbers actually pencil out. Just because you found something in the area that it is that you want, and it's a fourplex and all this stuff, does not mean it actually is a good property. It has to pencil out or it's a bad property. So this has been your real estate market update for the MatSu Valley. I hope it's been useful. If it has, make sure you subscribe so we can get to that 10,000 subscription mark. And thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.